Okay, here we go. Thanks a lot again. My name is Felix Beck. Let's have a look at 3 stages of my life in this presentation. So what you can see here on the left, it's a picture that I took from Berlin. This is a place where I studied visual communication at the University of Arts. And then in the center we have a picture from Abu Dhabi, from the desert. So I'll share a bit about my experiences over there. I was lucky to have an assistant professorship at NYU Abu Dhabi and spent 5 years in the Middle East. And then on the right, it's a snapshot from where I'm located right now, which is in the beautiful Münsterland, which is where I have the position of a media design professor at FH Münster University of Applied Sciences. And but let's be chronicle correct, and let's start in Berlin. So I went to Berlin to study, and so when you apply to an art school, you actually do it with a very traditional way of creating a lot of scribbles and or photographs, or you apply with something creative, right? And this is where I actually come from. So such type of drawings or also 3D renderings I did then during my studies, and I was lucky to then at this time work in an architectural studio in Berlin. And so the professor there, Sam Kelp, he offered me this assistant position, and I learned quite a lot about visualization, but also about how to communicate in spaces. Beside working on information design and visual graphics, I also did some more artistic stuff and started to work with technology. So just to give you a glimpse about what this looked like, so on the left you have a camera obscura that I built, and instead of paper inside, I used a chip from a webcam. And so I basically built a digital camera obscura and then experimented quite a lot with that. And on the right you can see the eye of my cat at that time that looked into that camera. But the beauty was that it was so imperfect. So you can see all those dots in the picture, which were actually dust particles that were on this sensor, on the light chip. And I still like the visuals of that. And so working with digital design and media design, and being also exposed to Creative Berlin, there were some other types of work like this one, in which you can see those arms of this kind of almost robotic object, and they are tuning forks, and they move up and down almost like a sea animal, to catch prey by getting you interested in it. And so this was kind of my experiment to also see how do people interact with robotic elements or physical kind of new entities, let's say. So this stuff is kind of more, let's say, the path towards the actual museum work and the cultural work that we're going to look at in a minute. But I thought it makes, it helps you to put me into the right drawer, right? So coming from the artistic sphere. So this was a project I did with a friend of mine, Simon Schiessel, and so we built this lamp in which we used LED dots, an LED matrix, and by carefully controlling those LEDs, we could create this shadow of an eye, and we could modulate the LEDs and control the movement of the eye so that it could follow people inside a room. So it became an observer. It was kind of the big brother or the little brother watching you inside a room. And again, it was something that was shown in a museum to talk about problems of observations of the state onto society, and so it's kind of what I was interested in that time. I'll skip those here and I jump to this slide, which describes a few rules defined by Art plus Com. And when I was finishing with my studies at the University of Arts, I was kind of lucky that my professor offered me a position to start in his design studio in Berlin. So Art plus Com it was called. It's still called. And we had a few rules, and there's also the one here in the center that said teach. And this is why I then, after some years, also I think I found my way into the academia, and why I enjoy speaking in front of students. All right. So let's jump to my first example to talk a little bit about what media and media representation of culture can look like. It's a bit older. It's already 10 years old. It's a museum that we designed at that time in Denmark, in Jelling. It's a Viking museum. And in that museum, and maybe I have to jump to even a second slideshow here to go a bit more in depth. It's this one. Come on. So this museum is located at a place where you can find a few of those rune stones from different eras. So there's one from King Gorm the Great. It's kind of one of the kings from the pagan era, and his son Harold Bluetooth. It's where the technology Bluetooth got its name from. He created his own runestone. And for the country of Denmark, it's a very important place because on one side it describes a certain story with runes, but when you then kind of three-dimensional read around the stones, it mentioned then the name Denmark for the first time. So it's kind of the birthplace of Denmark. And it's located, those runestones, close to different other very interesting sites. You can see it's somewhere in the nowhere, right? But you can see also there's in the center a huge grave mound, which is surrounded by this interpretation, new landscaped interpretation of a stone ship, right, in which the Vikings got buried from time to time. There's also this white line, which was a palisade. So they found during the last years, by excavating certain areas, those wooden palisades, right? They also excavated a few longhouses, and then there are more interesting stories like churches and the grave another graveful and so on. And so the museum, which is on the right over there, not in the center the church, but there on the opposite, the white building. The museum came to us saying that, look, with all those new findings, we have to write the entire history of Denmark in a new way. Because in the school books, Jelling was mentioned as, well, there was a grave mound, but nothing more from interest. Well, we found this rune stone, but that was it. And with those excavations, they said, we are having a problem that our exhibition has to be redone in a completely new fashion. And they wanted to communicate as a sub-story that the stories always change over time. And they no longer wanted to describe it in a fixed fashion. So in other words, they wanted visitors, every time they come, to give them new information and a new experience. right? So if you come in 2 weeks, it's a completely other experience for you. This was kind of the challenge we had there. And so I was lucky there, the young boy at the top left, together with my colleagues, that we were commissioned. We won this competition, and we were commissioned to develop this new exhibition. So we went to the site, learned as much about Vikings as we could, and then started with our first scribbles of interpretations of topics and themes, and transferred those into 3D renderings, right, on the computer. And if you compare those renderings that you see here, which is kind of computer generated, it looks like from I don't know, from an eco shooter, right, from a computer game. We were kind of very good at that time at this company to not only promise how it will look like, but also to create it in that same fashion. So let's have a look at, I'll skip through those, but let's have a look at the foyer, the entrance hall. And our first installation there, you can see it on the right, is this huge drawing robot. And you see the black wall, and on top of that, we had those 2 arms that were connected to a rail moving from left and right. And we could then upload a certain kind of vector graphics onto a computer system to draw then images on that wall. And those images could be updated kind of ad hoc, right? When the queen called and said, I would like to visit tomorrow, they could just throw another file onto the computer and say, hey, welcome queen, whatever. And and this was, in a way, what this whole museum is about. Every time you come, you will be introduced to new archaeological findings and the most recent interpretation of culture, of how it has been, in a way. So when you then enter this place, you come across the first room in which you then take a place near the fire, and you're welcomed then by this wonderful Viking lady to join her at her fireplace. And you can still see that while the drawings outside, it was chalk on a black board, this is now white light projected on a black wall, right? So we are projecting just with white projector light onto a black surface. So it's the same aesthetic. And it keeps on being used as a graphical style throughout to also communicate that there's a few details we know, and in the drawing we could be very precise then about those details, but there were other topics which the knowledge wasn't really available. So with this visual style, we could leave those things easily out. So the system we developed there was one in which, and I'm now taking here this role of the museum guide, which takes a seat at the Viking throne there, and then we are talking to the visitors, and we're discussing, okay, what do you know about Vikings? And then you say, well, there was, I don't know, Thor, and when there was a thunderstorm, then he's throwing his hammer or something, right? And so I could then, in my tablet, select certain stories and to directly address what the visitors are interested in. And also to have a database and a nice system which could easily be updated to enter the new findings and to basically produce content, right, in a continuous fashion. And so those are a few snippets to look how we designed it. So there were pre-produced drawings that were just then shown in a timeline with an audio on top with a very deep Viking voice that then shared those stories. And then from this room we entered, and I want to show there a few highlights and then continue. But in this room we can see now the Viking world. We are surrounded by this panoramic wallpaper, the white lines on black. And you can see there are certain sections that are introduced with artifacts. And there weren't many artifacts, right? So they found some little, it looks like chewing gum in one of the grave mounds. It was a candle, but nothing very special. So we went to Copenhagen and then talked to the National Museum guys and said, hey, can we borrow a few of your things? It would be great to get a sword and maybe an axe. And they said, well, we have this ugly sword, but maybe you can somehow use it for the exhibition. And so we were able to get some of the artifacts and then integrate those into the exhibition in kind of nice ways that they introduced to the themes of this Viking world, which were the Viking villages. It describes how the community lived at that time. Then on the left, the fights, right? The Viking warriors dying in war and going to Valhalla. And then on the right, there was also the traders, and then in the back, the royals that lived in Jelling. So yeah, there are some nice details. So we continue with the graphical style to, for example, discuss what might have been in this pottery pot, and eventually, well, in fall there were there was some food like this one, and in winter there was then a change. And so to then also keep the promise of having the opportunity to change this content, we integrated into the wall the option to project content. So what you see there that looks a little bit brighter and where the lines are thicker, so this is projection. And on the table surface there was an interface where you could push a button, and then basically a video was played in this upper area. And the nice thing there was that it seamlessly integrated into the entire surrounding. So it was kind of very subtle, and there were then overall the overarching sounds of birds and, you know, the wind, and then some shouting guys in the back, and then those subtle change of drawings that appeared, and all white on black. Here and there we used the color red, right, to underline that it was also kind of a bloody era. And there's one other example that I wanted to show here. So you can see this dead Viking, and there were actually findings in excavations where you had kind of a certain bone, and there was a cut mark, and so from those findings scientists could say, well, this Viking, he might have died because he got an axe into, where was it, the axe into his leg, or there was another kind of bone which there was an arrowhead sticking in, right? So the positions of those weapons were following the scientific evidence that exists, right? And then we worked at that time with kind of modern, what are they called? Like those doctors who analyze dead people. So they kind of told us, okay, how long would this Viking, how long would it take for him to die if he gets a spear into his stomach, or if he cuts his finger with a butter knife, and so on. And so this was kind of the topic of this section where we talk about the death of the Vikings, right? And the kids actually, they liked this quite a lot, which was very interesting to see. When you touch then the weapons on the orange marked area, it's kind of where we are tracking then if someone touches or not. So the weapons were made out of metal, so we could basically measure if someone touches it, right? It's kind of a capacitive sensor type. And then when you touch, you hear then the arrow like, and then you hear the blood, the vein, like spreading the blood over this section. And so I could talk much more about this installation, but so I wanted to show this because for me it was kind of the highlight of my about 10 years working with the design studio at that time. And so the museum was a perfect experiment, let's say, where we could try out so many things. And so a lot of the principles that I've learned then from my former professor and my boss, Joachim Sauter, who died a few years ago, I kept and I tried to integrate those styles of working and developing into my more recent projects. So yeah, let's jump then from Berlin to Abu Dhabi. So we are looking now at New York University at the campus in Abu Dhabi. So we are sitting on that wonderful island called Saadiyat. Saadiyat means happiness. It's the island of happiness. And quite close to this island, I took this picture here, the wonderful desert. So it's about 30 minutes drive from campus. And you have to imagine this is the complete opposite of what you will see when you visit Dubai, for example, right? Or visit Abu Dhabi. In Dubai, you have the Burj Khalifa, the biggest house or the biggest tower in the world. And actually the generation of the grandparents of the students that I taught, they grew up in this environment. And now they have, you know, they are more or less overwhelmed by the technology and the new type of culture they are exposed to in a way. So I'm showing a few glimpses because I really fell in love with the landscape, and my kids, they saw it as a huge sandpit. My daughter, she did her first footsteps on the desert carpet, and was kind of, I really look back to that. So being there in a tent, and then you wake up by the camels, they're like, and they make all those fancy sounds. So it was kind of very, the complete opposite of what my life growing up in Germany was, right? So I was lucky to get a glimpse into wildlife, and I also then, with students, we went on excursions to, for example, search with UV flashlight for those scorpions. And so scorpions actually reflect this UV light, and they show up like little lamps. And so with those students, that looks a bit weird here, but we then built those flashlights ourselves and went on a search for those scorpions in this area here, which is in Ras Al Khaimah. It's in the northern emirate, and it's one of my favorite places. The sound is very low, but what you should be able to hear is the call for prayers, right? And so it's an old fortress, and it's wonderful. You have all those wadis that come together, and then you have the echo of those calls. And so I was taking a lot of excursions. I'm skipping a bit through those. Also, I've been to Oman and found with my kids a few scorpions, but I want to go to this picture because what you can see here is this kind of very interesting effect when sand kind of is blown through the desert, right? You have the dunes, and then at one point there's this tip of the dune in which the sand runs down. It's basically blown then to the next chapter, let's say. And one idea, one interpretation of this natural effect from me was this one on the right. So the idea was to layer, to create different layers behind each other, and then look into each of the 7 emirates and use their sand to then display kind of this continuous change in one installation that I plan to install there in the entrance hall. And the nice thing there is that when you live in the Middle East or there in the Emirates, it's like things change continuously, and it kind of also helped me to understand the culture a bit, right? Of this continuum, and that there's always a shift in things. Or in this example here, so I looked with students, for example, into different interpretations of how could be then this continuous change be visualized, right? Showing winds from different angles and different altitudes to then create with different generators, then more or less like a screensaver that could be projected onto the shades of a building, for example, from the inside. And so such stuff became my private hobby, let's say, to work on things like that, and to be inspired by the environment that surrounded us in this area. And to give you another example, this one here, so it deals still with this, the individual pixels and kind of the chaos, but here we talk about visual encryption, and so it works in a way that if you have a picture, there are certain algorithms you could use to create a noise pattern or 2 kind of noise patterns, and when you overlap them, the encrypted image appears, right? So it's kind of it's nothing that I invented, but I enjoyed playing around with those principles. I tested around different resolutions, different styles, visual styles, also how then human perception changes if we use white on transparent or black on transparent, and so on. So I did kind of some research on that, and the ways I published then those types of research are not in traditional papers, scientific papers, but more in artistic installations. And what I developed there is, and I'll jump to this picture, is so you can see 2 glasses. The bigger one in the back, there was a print with the noise pattern, but you can still see an image. And there was then another glass mounted on top, and you had 2 motors, and the idea was that then the top panel moves around and encoded into both images on different positions are then certain detailed pictures. And so like the word mirage that shows up down there. So it's kind of my way of being inspired by the environment, by the things that surround me, and then also mix it in a way with technology. And which brings me to the Heritage Lab. And I'm lucky that I met different people, and Vijana is one of the persons I've met at that time, actually. And so it's a group of scientists, of academics, but also just people that are kind of very enthusiastic to explore culture and interpret heritage, let's say. And so the boat you can see there, this was one of the projects we were involved with. So it's you can see there was this site on campus in which then a team worked to recreate this 7-meter long boat in a certain way that eventually during Bronze Age, a few thousand years back, people might have built, right, in that same manner. So with this team, we then also developed the concept of how could we then, because there was a commission to not only build this 7-meter long boat, but to build a much longer one, a 20-meter long boat, which then was meant to be shown in the National Museum. And the idea was to create, for the building process, something like this center. Kind of, we came up with this idea, the Monsoon Winds Research Center. And the idea was that it was not only then the place for the workers to actually build on that physical prototype, but also for academics to learn as much as they can, and for the public to also come and inform themselves. And so here my knowledge helped about 3D visualization and a little bit about the architecture and the experiences about exhibitions. So this was kind of a concept we had, and it got step by step further. And then at one point, Corona hit, and the whole thing never happened, which was a pity. But you can still see that there was kind of some potential, right, to also have the boat in the foreground, and eventually then some movies to be shown in the background to give further context. So where would this boat be gone, or where does all the material come from, and so on. And at the end, our beautiful center looked like this one, which was, it was just a construction place. But anyways, I think it was a wonderful experience we had. There's another project I'd like to share with you. It's located in Sharjah. We are watching. We're looking at this watchtower, and it's located at a place at a location where the caravans that went from the Indian Ocean over to the Gulf, they passed by this place here. And there's I often took students with me to that place, and we did those drawing sessions to train them a little bit in scribbling and drawing. And one thing I came across, and I also enjoyed experimenting with, was if you overlay the drawings, all of them, no matter how beautiful or how perspectively wrong those drawings were, you can create kind of a visual that more or less comes very close to what the original looked like. And so the idea that developed from that was something that I still would like to do, and maybe we could also discuss it as a group later on. Let's imagine we start working together, for example, with refugees from Gaza, right, or other places being destroyed, and we ask them, hey, could you maybe draw your memories, right? How did your street look like? Or this wonderful monument, could you maybe draw it? And no matter how ugly or how wrong they might draw it, the communal memory would add and would multiply to kind of a visual style that creates a new visualization of this memory. So this is still in my backhead that I'd like to also develop further. And now back to the watchtower. So what we did there, a group of different colleagues of mine, there was Professor Zlatan Filipovic from the American University of Sharjah, there was also Professor Pablo Dornhege from the University of Arts, and multiple other people that I didn't mention yet. But we started to record basically using different softwares like Polycam, Scaniverse, or 3D Scanner. We started to record videos from those sites, and those videos and the pictures we took, we could use to create 3D models using photogrammetry. And it's kind of, at certain places, medium resolution, but it's enough to kind of get an understanding how an architecture or how an object looks like. And so we, as a group, we documented quite a few sites in the Emirates, and we also still have the data, and later on I'd like to show you how we plan to publish the data. But in this specific project, what we did was to share to a group from UNESCO the story of this watchtower and the story of the Wadi that this watchtower was in. And how this whole thing came together was that the Emirate of Sharjah, they applied to get listed as UNESCO World Heritage with a few different sites. And so UNESCO came and they traveled to some sites, but this one is kind of too far away. They couldn't just drive 8 hours by a car and then hike through the Wadi, with 45 degrees. And therefore, the idea was to kind of develop a showcase in which we could still share it and give them a glimpse of how the site looks like. So what we did is we built this cardboard kind of little cardboard model and 3D printed with this brownish filament, the tower that we had scanned. And when we now put VR goggles on at the exact same position, so let's say this here would be our model, right? So let's say this would be our model, and I put my VR goggles on, I would see now a high resolution model at the exact position, right? Looking at it, and I could also touch it. And so I would now see kind of texturized context, and then we started a storytelling in which these models kind of scaled up, and we suddenly then found ourselves in this Wadi, right? And you can see in this picture that there are certain areas which were high resolution, others where we didn't have time, and we used kind of polygonal structures to just show, well, there's kind of the mountain side. And then we used this to demonstrate to the audience, and it was almost like in this scenario here, we had one person with the goggles on, and he was then carefully, walking around, and what he saw live was then displayed to the projection to kind of give the context. And later on, the audience could also put the VR goggles on to look at it themselves. And so this here gives you a bit of how the experience starts. So you're standing on this almost like a flying carpet, and you're going through the Wadi. I think, you can hear a little bit here and there. And then there was a voice that we pre-recorded that tells this story and explains the meaning of hearing certain numbers of gunshots. we hear that?
Guards at the watchtowers communicated using gunshots. If villagers heard 3 gunshots from one of the towers, it was a sign for the men to gather the water and the crops in the walled tower area, where it was easier to guard. There are very few accounts for what 2 gunshots meant, but there is speculation that these were meant to announce the coming of a caravan.
So when you have the goggles on, it's kind of very immersive and kind of very loud, but it's, yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe not yet. Now the movie's over anyways. Okay, but so I think you get an understanding of how this whole thing worked. It was at the time before the 5-star hotels were set up. And there was quite some healthy environment still at that time, right? With the dolphins coming so close, and the turtle nesting sites. And I wonder if it's still there. This is about 9 years ago now. And I documented at that time also a lot of those kind of let's say changes. And I was lucky that, for example, I could also be part of a dissection of a baby turtle, and we found then also remains of plastic particles inside the belly of this turtle, which then kind of opens a whole other chapter of my life, because I started then to look into plastic and plastic recycling. But I'll keep this now out of my storytelling. But those are the nerdles, and I'll just skip through that now, but I could talk more about this in depth as well. But one of the chances I had was then to collaborate with different communities in, for example, Sri Lanka, in India, or in Manila in the Philippines. And I was lucky to take a student group to Manila to work there with an informal community. And what you can see here is an informal trash site in Tondo. It's kind of in the port area. And we worked there with a group of teenagers. And it was an NGO that supports those teen girls. And all of them were teen moms. They were all having children. And the youngest mom was 9 years old. So it's kind of something, you know, when you are with the students in the Burj Khalifa, in the highest building of the world, and you see the wealthy of this country, and then you expose students very carefully, right, to the other realities in the world. It changed a lot the perspectives, right, of the different stakeholders that I worked with. And with those girls, so we learned quite a lot. For example, how they used water lilies on the one hand, but also in the earlier picture you can see on this trash site, they were doing something. And their work actually consists of, they throw garlic into water buckets and then peel the garlic, right, and sell the garlic back to the restaurants. And the skins of the garlic they use to dry it, and they create this paper from the garlic skin. And they showed us how they are doing it, and how they are then making those wallets and how they sell it on the local markets. And we showed them how to make wallets from recycled plastic bags. But it was kind of also interesting. They showed me how to use basically organic material, and we showed them how to use this crappy plastic. And it kind of also changed my personal perspective, right, on how do we act as human beings. So I try to involve students into those experiences. I also went several times to Mumbai, and we lived with a community for 2 weeks as part of a program that was called Engineers for Social Impact. We lived with the communities in Dharavi, and worked with families in this, I think it's Southeast Asia's biggest slum, right? With over 1 million people living together on this very small footprint. There, so to give you an impression, we had, for example, chances to join certain areas where usually tourists, right, or let's say other foreigners would not be able to join. Would it be maybe too far off, or maybe too uncomfortable, or too dangerous, right? But we were lucky to then also, as we collaborated with one of the leaders of the community, we were under the umbrella, let's say, right, in a protected environment. Yeah, it was very interesting. And also here, we were there during Holi, the festival of colors, in which you are chased and then thrown with those sometimes very toxic, very colorful, chemicals. Also the guys over there, they try to give to our students then, this self-made, super strong alcohol. But we were all kind of very, very safe, and it was a wonderful experience, right? What I also enjoy then is to do little side projects in between. And what you see here was on that same night, I used a bathroom mirror to project then those pixels, and basically people walking by on the pavement. Is it called pavement, right? They were tracked with a webcam, and then those projected pixels reacted to them. So it was kind of more or less like the analog pixels that were now transferred into digital pixels, the colors. And to me, it was interesting to see that for the guys over there, for the community members, this was not fancy at all. And it was really interesting to see that they are very much aware of technology, and they are surrounded by technology, even if the majority can't afford it. But they know kind of about what's fancy and what's not. And this was also very, very interesting to me. Third example is, and you see this is now kind of mixing different things, right? It's kind of, on the one hand, it's the learning about cultures and foreign communities, and also to integrate students into those experiences. But also for me to experiment with different types of technology in those contexts. And what we see here now, we are in Sri Lanka. It's still part of this Engineers for Social Impact program. And you can see there up in the mountains, there was an entire part that slipped during a landslide. And it wiped out all this area where we are driving through, where there are no palm trees. So an entire village was wiped out, right? The landslide happened, I think, 1.5 years before we went there. And so there's also one scene where you can see the 3rd floor of a house. So the house you see up there, this was the 3rd floor. So you can see all this soil and rocks. It was kind of pretty high. And obviously the reason of this disaster, environmental disaster, is the deforestation, right? And on the one hand, wood is used for cooking in the rural areas, for burning the wood, right? But then also for building and construction, and to export it, to sell it, right? And kind of we could discuss this in another chapter as well, but this is kind of what's happening. And we went there to work with Habitat for Humanities, which is an NGO. It's an organization that receives receives money, for example, from the United Nations, And Habitat for Humanities, they worked to identify a new site for the survivors of this landslide, for I think 7-8 families, and to build then in a safe area new houses. And we then supported by helping and building the houses for the families. And in return, we learned a lot about their environment, right? Who's bringing the income back home? Where's the electricity coming from? Where's the water? Is the water drinkable? And all those questions, right? And then, of course, experimenting with media in parallel and doing 360 videos and scans and all this. But the main story here is about the learning from the community and to live with the families. And for example, what we learned is, and I don't know the English term, but this plant here, Nelke, it's those little Nelke. Yeah. It's like cinnamon stuff. I don't know. It's a little plant. So this is what they grow and what they sell. Or here we can see that this lady, she cooks, on open fire, and there are all those research papers that looked into the numbers of how many women actually die so and so many years earlier because of breathing in all the carbon monoxide that's emitted, right? And again, a side project here was that we showed them how to build kind of a certain type of oven using metallic pots that could be connected into each other, that will not emit that much smoke, but create carbon that they could sell later on. So there are a lot of those stories. Yeah, and our toilet that we shared with the family, and there was no flowing water. So you have to imagine that the granddaughter of the sheikh that grew up in a palace, she shared the same, circumstances like all of us and like the families. And I think that those experiences changed the view of everyone that joined us on that trip. And at the end, obviously, there was this ceremony when the final house was then handed over to the family. And again, a week later, we went to Burj Khalifa and entered the fountain control room to see, and to be exposed to the technology that was there. And it kind of, to me, this was those 5 years teaching down there, it just flew by, because there was one memory after the next, one nice experience. And if you jump then from Burj Khalifa to this picture, this is how many of the parents of my students grew up in. It's in Jazirat al-Hamra, it's a certain village. And, this discrepancy of, where the Emiratis are right now and where their parents have been and the grandparents, it's really an amazing and very interesting story, and a lot of things to learn from. Yeah. All right, so let's leave Abu Dhabi behind us and let's jump now to the wonderful Münsterland, and I'd like to share a bit of what I'm doing there and what I did there. So I came back 5 years ago, and I'm still quite a lot influenced of those early experiences. On the one hand, the technology, the 3D visualizations and architecture, sustainability plays a role, but then also culture. And in this example here, I looked at how could we develop a new type of housings, and how could we maybe then also for students create places of very cheap living on the countryside, and have a very little ecological footprint. And the idea was to then set up on a just green land, set up those houses on poles, and you have those tracks. And when you're done after 20 years, you could just almost move to the next area and leave no footprint on that side. So it's kind of a different type of work that I'm currently involved in. Or this one here deals with virtual reality, and I developed a kind of type of system or concept of a system in which you could slip into the role of your avatar. And this one here, you can see you could become then, someone wearing a kondura, this male white long shirt that Emiratis often wear, or which is here on this side, or on top you could wear the bisht, it's kind of that goes on top. Or when you are then in that role, you could enter so-called majlis. Majli are the places in which the community comes together to discuss topics, right? Almost like here you have a U shape in which you come together, and in the center of the U shape sits the most important person, like her. That's not what looking currently, but anyways. So let's say, right? So, and if someone higher up arrives, then everyone has to move, and kind of they slip then. And the interesting thing is, it's almost like we called it at that time like a desert democracy, in which then topics are exchanged, and they are kind of in a dialogue, and then the sheikh that sits over there takes the outcome of the story and brings it over to the next majlis, to the next communal meeting. And so we did a whole research with a group and looked into those topics of majlis and how it looks like in an architectural fashion, but also how does it work, functional, and what does it represent? Because today, almost every household has their own majlis. It's kind of a way, again, in this U shape, to welcome guests, right? And it became also kind of almost like a fashionable to have your own place. Yeah, so you can see that there's different types that I'm still interested in. And I wanted to show you now another short movie. This one here, and sound is on, which is about and I think I'm wearing this shirt as well. So it's the Design Technology Innovation Summer School, DTI. And I gave it for the 4th time this year. And it's a summer school in which we invite international students to join. So we invite everyone awake? All right, good. So we invite everyone to join us in Münsterland, and then we go on excursions and to collaborate with local museums. We learn chiseling sandstone and learn about sandstone, look into the SDGs. We developed then together with Israeli and Iraqi students a bridge, actually as a team building exercise. Then we learn about programming, microcontrollers, how to code in Python, so it's kind of an introduction to computational design. We stay overnight in this old water mill, and we actually do in a very condensed way all this stuff that I'm interested in, visiting a castle and then build something with electronics and 3D print something and model something, and also being exposed to quite a lot of lectures and presentations. So it's a intellectual, a pretty pretty nice stimulation, I would say. And then in the second week, so this was the first week, in the second week we take students then on campus and we develop then solutions for problems they identified in their first week. And those solutions could be then concepts for services or actual artifacts or prototypes, using the skills they have learned in those 2 weeks. And one idea is to then also include Tilburg University in the future. And I applied for funding. Hopefully we'll get from the European Union to be 1 week next summer in Münsterland, and then be 1 week in Morocco, and to then kind of look at from two different perspectives onto the same problem that community has. This will be next year, and the year after hopefully will be 1 week in Münster, and then go for 1 week to the Emirates. And I still have good connections so that we could visit certain sites and to then work on same burning questions. I would like to end with presenting you one more thing. So I mentioned earlier the Heritage Lab, which is kind of a buzzword that by saying it, I should also name actually other organizations. And the most important one is the CIE, Center for International Heritage Activities. And their founder was a colleague of mine at NYU, Robert Parthesius. And Robert and I, we were involved into different projects together. And when I moved back to Germany and he came back then to the Netherlands, we thought, how could we continue the work we were doing at that time? And how could we still connect to all the, the nice colleagues that we were working with? And what developed over time was this website. It's you can see this world map, and you can see that there are different sections of teams working in different areas. And it's basically, maybe you know it, it's like a WordPress system, a blog system, and you could then zoom in and see, there are 22 posts of this community, of this research lab located in this area down here. And so what we have done over the last weeks is, or month, we have completely reprogrammed this entire heritage lab. And you can see it's now the Heritage Universe. And I would like to share with you how it works and to show you Safari. I'll open my browser. And so what you can see here is now the up and running system, but it's only containing placeholder content, right? So we have generated with just random images and random names, but to see if the system works. But you can see that the idea is that we want to collaborate with certain labs, teams around the world, doing research on heritage, right? Publishing stories. And it's not to then publish for the 25th time the same statue that is already UNESCO World Heritage. It's more to worship and to learn about the local stories that the community is interested in, and not the old same persons from the United Nations that declare, well, this stone is now World Heritage. And so the system now works, and it also works if we zoom into, let's say, now this example here. You see it's also the geolocation is a bit random, but what we have built is by clicking onto it, you get a preview of the story, and then you see how this story is connected to other stories that might have used the same tags. So the idea is to then, on a global level, to use this also as a research tool to learn about related stories, right? Let's say in India, there's a certain boat being built out of a certain tree type. And then you see, this tree is also in, I don't know, in Jordan. But it turns out that they use the wood to build a musical instrument, and so on. And well, this database now works. And what we do is, if we, for example, look at the individual labs, let's jump here to this one in Istanbul, and you can see this is now only with content in Istanbul. When we zoom on this out, there's nothing else. So we are now on the level of the local heritage lab. If we jump back now to the universe view, the global view, this is where everything gets aggregated and we connect then the individual labs on a global level. And we have created this system, maybe it goes too much into depth, but we have integrated a system of authorship. If, for example, Biljana wants to create in Sarajevo a nice heritage lab, and there are certain stories she does not want to be published on a global level, we, with our system, can cover that. But if she wants it on a global level, she pushes basically a request. It shows up in a database, and we then say, yes, book, and it's rendered then on the global side. And I'm very much interested to now, identify as many collaborations as possible in different sites in the world, and maybe Tilburg is also a good place to maybe fill or create a heritage lab and then fill the database and see how do we connect with other communities. And I think I'll take a break right now, and I'm happy to answer your questions if you have some. Thank you.